Okay, and so thank you. So this webinar is called Metrics, Models, and Mindsets. And the three of us wanted to talk about the future of application security. And so I'm Tanya Janka. I'm your host, or the, I guess, moderator. And I run a small secure coding training company. I have written some books, Alice and Bob Learn, Secure Coding and Application Security. I speak at conferences and write blogs and all sorts of stuff like that. And I'm just trying to help people make better code. Ram, did you want to introduce yourself next?
Yes, my name is Aram, and I've been in AppSec for now over 15 years. First as a researcher at the University of Leuven in Belgium. Then as an industry expert, I'm the CEO of a Belgian product firm named Codific. We are the builders of the SAMI tool here. And more recently, I decided to fight cybercrime by joining the OWASP SAM project as a core contributing member, and that has been an amazing journey. So that's me in a nutshell. I
So
don't write books.
you get to work
I
with
do
all the
speak.
smart people from SAM, like Brian Glass.
Yes. Oh my God. That was initially I had such an imposter syndrome. Like, oh my God, I don't know anything. These guys are amazing. Now I feel less of an imposter.
Well, I think they're probably pretty happy to have you.
I hope
Spiros,
so.
Spiros, tell us about you. Introduce yourself.
So, hey everyone, my name is Spiros Gasteratos. I've been doing OWASP things for a very long time, like 15, 18 years, something like that, since I was a student. I've maintained several tools. You might have seen some or used some of my tools, like the Project Wayfinder, that is in literally the OWASP projects page, or opencre.org. And lately, I started a company. It is Smithy Security. If you came to DC, you might have seen our booth. Our goal is to use agentic AppSec workflows to automate as many things in application security as we can. We're starting with noise and tooling before we move on to GRC and other things.
Nice. Like Zapier, but for all the AppSec tools.
Yeah, you put it very well. Zapier for AppSec tools.
Oh, nice. Awesome. So audience members, I'm going to ask the two panelists questions, but you are also allowed to ask questions. I'm going to start off. Well, I have enough questions for hours, and I just get to pick the ones I feel like. But if you put questions in the chat, we'll slowly go through them and answer them too. But I wanted to start with, so how we started talking about this webinar is that, we're all going to Washington, D.C. for the OWASP Global AppSec Conference. And we're like, what does the future of AppSec hold? And, the idea that we would talk about some of the things that happened at the conference. And so a lot of the ones that I saw were about how to build an effective AppSec program. And I was thinking, because you worked on OWASP SAM, what would be like its first steps that you felt were super essential for building an AppSec program? Like if you're coming in and there's nothing.
Yeah. That's a great question, although I'm pretty sure all the questions are going to be great. Now, I'm going to reiterate basically what the project advocates, which is good. Then I don't have to come up with stuff on my own. Essentially, to build a good AppSec program, you first have to understand where you are, which is really easy, I'm going to say. Maybe not crazy easy, but it's straightforward by using OWASP SAM as a framework to run an assessment of how mature your current security posture is. And that can be done in a specific scope. You can start with one team, product, or you can do the full organization. It largely depends. And then once you come up, and SAM is amazing because it's going to give you a score. It's going to give you a score between 0 and 3, and it's continuous score. So it's not 0, 1, 2, 3. And that score reflects on your current maturity level across 30 streams and 15 security practices, which is great. It quantifies security, but then the score itself, the core team says, forget the score. Well, it doesn't really say forget the score, but don't focus on the score too much because it's just a number. Once you know where you are, then you need to set your improvement targets and start working towards your improvement targets. This is where we even come up with an idea that we call target posture. So essentially, you don't want to maximize your score, you want to minimize the gap to your target. And that part, I have to say, is probably the harder part to figure out where you have to get, where you want to get. So what is your target posture? And then there is a lot of science, I would say, and there is a lot of understanding of essentially what your risk is, and then building that target profile in function of your risk.
I wasn't sure if you said this, but can you tell us what SAM stands for?
Software Assurance Maturity Model.
You might have said that.
Essentially, it quantifies the full landscape of application security. I think we also checked it against other models like BSIM, DSOM, NIST SSTF. There are mappings between SAM and these other models, which I'm not aware of any other frameworks or models out of this. Maybe Microsoft SDL. And we know that there isn't much missing. So SAM gives you a complete picture of the full application security landscape, which means you can run an assessment to understand across the full landscape where you are.
Nice. Spiros, did you want to add anything?
Only 1.5 things, I guess. First, something that Aram mentioned in the SAM and DSOM user day, and it was something new for me, and I loved it. You don't need the highest SAM score you can have per category is 3. The SAM team says that you do not need to reach 3 for everything. It heavily depends on the organizational and essentially the business value. If you spend, I know, $1 million in order to reach level 3 for something, but it doesn't provide any value to the business, congratulations, you spent $1 million doing nothing. So that's something I was blind to, and Aram very helpfully mentioned on stage a few days ago, and it blew my mind.
Yeah, I agree. You do not want to spend $1 million securing something worth $10,000 unless it's going to save lives or protect national security, or do you know what I mean? Or there's something that can't be measured in dollars that justifies that cost. Yeah, that's a good point. I also want to add.
I think that.
Sorry, no, you go.
Yeah, but the key problem is how much is enough spending and how much is enough security, which goes into that idea of where is your risk. And I guess you guys also have attended Adam Shostak's keynote on the second day on risk quantification doesn't work. I'm not super sure I agree with it. I do understand what it means, so it goes into the fine details, but it is extremely hard to put a number on your risk, because that would have made application security extremely easy then. Just wanted to add that as well.
I also start with inventory, and I know it's one of the SAM things, but I just feel like, so in SAM you get to choose, but please choose inventory. As if you don't know what you have, you can't protect it, right?
Yes, there are actually, I think, at least 3 places where that inventory comes up, because you need to understand your risk, which means you need to know what you have. You need to manage your data, which means you need to understand where you're processing data and what you have. Again, it's not explicitly mentioned have an inventory, but it is there. If you don't have an inventory, it would be unlikely that you're going to get any high scores. Not even, I would think you would be very close to 0 essentially.
Which makes sense, right? Like, you need to do archaeology and find the skeletons in your closet first before you can build on that.
So agreed. I have a trick question for you, Spiros, because I know we're going to agree, but I wanted to ask, so at OWASP Global AppSec, there are a lot of tools, like a lot. You make a tool, so that's why I'm asking you. So sometimes I run into devs and they're like, I'll just make it, I'll code it myself. And sometimes that makes sense, but sometimes that does not make sense. And so if you were going to explain to someone, like at an organization, when they should choose to build their own tool versus when they should leverage an existing tool, like buy an identity system, buy a thing to do the integrations, whatever it is, How should organizations decide that? Especially when, so I am so biased because I was a dev for so long, like way longer than I did security still. I was always like, I can do it. And so there's this bias of I'll code that for you. So how would you talk that through?
Oh, this is a fantastic question. So the build versus buy debate is something that I've spent many nights like discussing with CISOs and with my team back when I was a CISO myself. So the basic idea, it comes down to pretty much what we just discussed, right? Cost versus how much you get out of it. This always changes based on technological advancements. For example, before AI or before LLMs and code generation with LLMs, build versus buy was a completely different situation. So right now, I would say if it touches critical infrastructure or it is itself critical infrastructure, so for example, perhaps it audits your highly regulated code base or your main product, or perhaps it triages findings for your main product automatically, then probably you want to find a team that knows what they're doing. And most importantly, they have the energy and the focus and the time to deal with it. If it's a toy, something small, a marginal improvement on your day-to-day, probably you should build it. However, there is an asterisk there because I've seen triple-digit teams make this mistake. When that thing becomes critical infrastructure, first, you should be able to let your baby go and buy it if someone else offers it first. And second, and most importantly, AI has a very, very big problem. It lacks context. Not only it lacks context, but it lacks frameworks. If you ask any LLM to generate a piece of code that, let's say, does X, connects to Jira and finds who needs to fix it, the LLM is not able to think about retriability, observability, having the ability to test this thing. It's going to generate exactly what you asked for it. So if you do this too much, you will end up with a collection of dirty scripts that do not scale and are very brittle. This is the point where you need to start probably thinking about a framework or an SDK or something that gives you this pluggability, retriability, and general enables you to do this at scale.
Whoa, that is a much more in-depth and intelligent answer than not that I was expecting your answer not to be intelligent, but I was like, oh, like so many things to clarify. Yeah. I like it. I am often trying to convince teams like don't build your own identity, session management, authentication, authorization systems, because if Microsoft still has bugs reported in Active Directory after all these years, and they have, 500,000 employees and 500,000 consultants working for them, and they measure their profits in trillions and they still have bugs, you're going to have worse bugs. Right? Like, if they still are struggling with this, like, it's hard. It's a hard problem. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Aram, did you want to add anything?
No, not after those answers. So
I
good.
know, right? It was really good. We have a question in the chat from Sabrina that I really like. So I'm like skipping all the other questions to ask this one. So I really like security champions, and a thing that we saw at OWASP Global AppSec and that we've been seeing, I feel, more and more at conferences is security champion programs. And quite frankly, like, I love them. I'm very extroverted. I've had really good experiences with those. Even if it didn't go perfectly, I've always felt that I've gotten a lot of value from them. So I might be positively biased, and that's okay. But the question, and I want to open it to both of you, and then I'm going to add on because that is my favorite topic. But what's the biggest mistakes that you see organizations make when they're trying to scale their security champion program? And hopefully, like, ideas on how to avoid it. Recently, Sabrina stepped into a role where she manages the Security Champions program, so she's curious, but I suspect a lot of people are curious. And I feel like as we continue on with AppSec, that these types of things are going to be even more and more important. So I feel like it's a pretty darn good question.
Aram, you want to start?
Okay. I would say I'm not an expert on security champions programs, but I have seen some good and some bad, and I'm going to start with the bad, and then if there's time, I'll also tell the good. So a couple of bad things that I've seen, and the first theme is something running across all organizations when it comes to AppSec. They see this thing, that's this new shiny thing that is called, in this case, security champions, but I've also seen organizations doing the same with threat modeling. They're like, oh my God, this is great, we should do this. And then it somehow becomes this bureaucratic thing where they want to do it and put a checkbox next to it, like, okay, we did it, we did this. And probably because of this, I have seen a security champions program in an organization where the security champions were sort of lacking a very good understanding of the tech. And this leads to the good, which happens at my organization. We don't really call them security champions, but then we have a couple of people in the teams. We have small teams, so it's all much smaller scale that I could consider security champions. These guys were devs, and they are still full-time devs. And being a security champion is a very small part of their job, where they attend conferences and then they bring back this knowledge, or they look into something security related. They've been both sent to pen testing training, and then they bring this back to the team. So it's like a knowledge sharing back to the teams and making the teams more aware. It's not like the teams can start pen testing things on their own. It's about like understanding, okay, what sort of things are they finding, and how we can make sure that we tackle all of that systematically. I don't know how good of an answer is that, but I hope that helps.
It does. Spiros, did you want to add anything before I talk too much on this topic?
Yeah, actually, two personal mistakes I've made. One, taking them for granted. It's a very human mistake. You go to teams and you ask their managers, hey, give me a champion, and they give you sometimes a good champion, sometimes a bad champion. But you set up a process and you say, hey, every so often you need to do things X, Y, and Z. And if they don't do it, you chase them and you deal with this as if it was any other kind of regulated thing like vulnerability triaging or SLAs, which only causes, because you took them for granted, meanwhile it's a voluntary role, it only causes pain. Second one, and most important, I would say, is not on top of taking people for granted, is seeing security champions as a bribable role. So I try to fix that by giving them pizza parties and like toys, essentially, and things like that, which obviously did not work out. The only time it worked for me was when I started looking at them exactly as volunteers, exactly myself as a community manager. And instead of grabbing them with, like, I don't know, 10-cent swag from a vendor or a conference, I started looking at these people as if they are the next security team members if they choose to make that change. That's when it worked. And as a matter of fact, after I left, half of the security champions started moving into the security team, and now security team is all security champions.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that. I like both of those. So I have run into a lot of issues, but I would say the two most common ones that I see, the first one is, so the security team launches a champions program and they set out no specific responsibilities or goals for the champions. So and we're talking about metrics in this, or we're going to. So after my answer, then there's one more question I have, and then a question in the chat I want to do. But basically, they don't set a specific goal. It's totally unclear what their responsibilities are. And then they get random results. And so they're like, oh, they're going to make better code. What does that mean? Oh, we're going to have better security. Okay. What does that mean? Like, if we just don't do one bad thing, then we have better security and we're done now. We can all go home, right? And so to avoid this, obviously, right, we need to set a clear goal for the program. And there could be a few goals, right? Like there could be a few items in the list of goals, and then specific responsibilities on both sides to get there. So let's say one of your goals is we're going to set up a new AppSec tool. So like stack analysis, software composition analysis, whatever it is, does not matter. And so this security team, the responsibility is to show them like the tool, to set it up, to get it rolled out. Dev's responsibility, or security champions, is to ensure it gets rolled out, to learn the tool with them, and then triage those results with the help of training from the security team. And then the goal is that, like, okay, we're going to roll this tool out, we're going to run it every week, we're going to triage the items. If it's above this, we're going to fix it, and we're going to check in 3 months and see if this is working for everyone. Everyone knows exactly what to do, right? But usually I find that's not what I see. It's very vague, and it's like, well, they should know they're triaging. Did you ever say those words? Right? So that would be the number one thing that I see, is that there's no specifics, and then you like, one dev might do that for you, but the rest might interpret and do something. They can't read minds, like, as far as I know. And so then the other thing, so I have such this long list of things because I've done like talks on this. But I would say that the security team, super pumped, super excited. They're like, we are launching a program, it's going to be great. And they do a zillion things the first 2 or 3 months. So they have an event every week. They send this amazing newsletter. They write a blog post. They like spend one-on-one time with each champion, and they're amazing. And then their job gets in the way because they have a security incident, or one of them goes on vacation, and they burn out and they get really exhausted, and they didn't pace themselves, and or they burn out the champions because they are trying to spend so much time with them. The champions are like, my boss is gonna friggin' murder me if I spend 1 more hour with the security team. And then the program kind of like sputters and stops. And because it stopped for like a month or 2 or 3, the team's like, oh, it's over. No, just pick it back up. Right? So the solution I feel for this is, however much you think you're going to do, cut it in half and do that. I know that sounds nuts, but I do this all the time, where I'm like, I'm going to do 2 webinars every week and write 4 blog posts a week. And then I look at that and I'm like, so now that Tanya's sane and she sat back and she's being more realistic, it's like, if I could do 1 blog post a week, or maybe 2 a month, and then I could also, do 1 webinar a week. And I'm like, do I think that I can do that consistently? And then I ask, other people, does this seem reasonable? And then I plan that. And if you stop, it's okay. Just admit it, and just like email all the champions and say, hey, so the security team had a major incident and we really got off track there. We'd like to apologize. We still want all of you, right? All of you, we still want you. So we're going to do something next month. We just wanted to check in and let you know that's why, we canceled 2 events in a row, or whatever it is, right? I find that just like coming clean goes so well. Yeah, that's my answer, and I'm going to try to zip it now so I don't talk the whole time. But so like on that, we didn't set goals, no metrics thing. I wanted to ask a question, and then it's going to perfectly lead into Conless question. So the 3 of us end up working with metrics a lot and talking about it a lot. And I know both of you have given really good talks on that topic. And so I wanted to start with Erem for this question, but Spiros, I know you're going to have lots to say. So how do we avoid vanity metrics? So metrics that look so cool on a dashboard, but don't actually like drive real improvement and don't offer like a lot of extra value. So first of all, like, if one of you could explain what you feel vanity metrics are, and then like, how do we avoid those? Or what would be examples of vanity metrics and what are not, like, just kind of clarify. Aram, are you okay to start with that one, or?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to start with something called the Goodhart's law, which says when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And essentially, that is perhaps the definition of a vanity metric. The idea is that once people know something is being measured, that they focus on the metric itself rather than the underlying goal. And to steer away from vanity, we should always start, and this is number one mistake organizations are making, we should always start with a goal rather than metrics. So it's a top-down approach, and a bottom-up approach is not going to work. And this is not me just saying it. There is a research from 30 years ago, and those guys did exactly the same for defect management. So not security vulnerability management, but defect management, which is pretty close. It's a subset actually of defects, where they have concluded that picking metrics, and there are a ton of metrics, is not going to work, and then cycling your goals to those metrics. It should be starting from your goals and then picking metrics. But before you pick the metrics, when you have the goals, there is also something that is a middle layer. You need to figure out the questions that help you answer, that help you measure the progress towards those goals. So essentially, it's a 3-layer framework. There's a framework actually called Goal Question Metric Framework, where you start with goals that are relevant for your organization. Then, and they have to be specific. I clearly don't have the time to explain what is a good goal, what is a bad goal, but just saying, we want to minimize our risk, that is not a good goal, I would say. The questions need to measure your progress towards those goals, and then the metrics need to answer those questions in a quantitative way. But then I've recently started also looking at qualitative metrics, which can be still fall into certain measurement scales, and I don't want to go too far there. But your metric doesn't always need to be a number from 0 to 10 or 0 to 5. It could also be a qualitative label, but then you need to be very careful because it might go in too much subjectivity. And once you have the metrics, once you have the goals and the questions, then you can start picking the metrics that are most meaningful in answering those questions to measure progress towards those goals. And then unfortunately, finding good metrics is really hard. And the second problem is that metrics require a scientific approach. It is, I don't think just common sense is not really always going to help you. It's going to be very hard to use common sense to pick good metrics. Unfortunately, it requires a lot of science. And by science, I mean statistics and data science. And honestly, I was never good at statistics because that's so freaking hard, because it's so counterintuitive. Many statistics, it has been proven by psychologists that humans are not good at some type of statistics. And I can give you an example, like a basketball player who shoots 3-pointers, and if he has a 50% chance of making it every time, and he has missed 5 times in a row, humans naturally and intuitively think if he shoots one more time, he's going to make it. Because, hey, he missed 5 times and his stats are 50%. That is not how statistics works, because the next shot, it's still 50% chance. It's a miss or make it. And just gives you an idea of the fact that statistics is hard. And this is why we sometimes pick metrics which don't make sense, but then they look good. And the other problem is that we have a lot of tools to pick these metrics from, and that's the easy approach. We don't want to come up with metrics and measure them ourselves. We just want to pick whatever the tools are giving us. And many organizations just create goals based on these numbers that the tools are giving them. I can go on and on, but I want to give the chance to Spiros to jump in.
So on that, since we last discussed about this, Aram, by the way, for the audience, this discussion comes from Aram's fantastic talk in AppSec Barcelona back in May. I'm not sure if there is a video, but maybe there are slides online.
No, there is not. But I made a video. I'm going to share it later on when I share. I made a separate video of that. So, yeah.
Awesome. So since then, I found one more layer of metrics that are metrics that get you promoted. So in very large, very complex organizations, you want to show your boss vanity metrics, or at least a level of vanity metrics, so you can get promoted, despite the fact that you're doing the best that you can with what you have or what you're allowed to have, and maybe specific true metrics do not like show a slightly different story, but I've seen many people very, very successfully use vanity metrics for reporting and managing upwards.
Yeah.
That's it.
And an example, I just want to, because Tanya, you asked for example, I want to tell people what is an example of a vanity metrics. Vanity metric, I'm not going to call it a vanity metric, but in the context of how secure we are, looking at green dashboards or red dashboards is, okay, bold statement. It's a vanity metric because I've seen teams who have so much legacy code, it is extremely hard for them to get a green dashboard, but then they have very good practices in terms of AppSec. And I've seen the complete opposite. A team that has completely green dashboards, they have horrible scores on OWASP SAM, and OWASP SAM measures your processes and roles and responsibilities, and then only tools. I've seen teams that have scored badly on OWASP SAM, and they're like, but our dashboard is so good. We have all green. Why are we having such bad SAM scores? Because, I mean, you're using latest technology, and that latest technology perhaps comes with a set of best practices. But then there are a ton of other issues that correlate to your risk, that relate to your risk, which you are not doing anything about. So that's an example of a potential vanity metric. I'm not saying tools are bad, by the way. That is not the message I'm trying to throw in here.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. I feel like really good metrics can be quite difficult to measure. So when I used to work at a place that you all know the name of, because everyone knows it. Anyway, we would write blogs, and then they would measure like whose blogs are being read more. And one of my colleagues, he would post his blogs on Reddit, and he'd get like 5,000 views, and I would get like 200, 300, 400. And I was like, I know I'm security and he's a dev, and there's more devs than security folks, but like, whoa, those numbers. So I was like, teach me the ways, oh, wise one, right? And so I am banned from a lot of Reddits now. But anyway, because you're not supposed to share things you wrote. Someone else can share what I wrote, but I can't, because then it's the end of the world. But anyway, but then I asked the metrics team, can you gather more? And so we gathered how long the person stayed on the link. So it turned out people from Reddit would stay on average 2 seconds. And people that were reading my blog posts were staying close to 2 minutes. So we realized people were reading my entire post, and most people were going to his page being like, and then leaving. And so both of us had work to do, right? Because I wanted more people reading. He wanted people to read the whole thing. And so he's like, oh my gosh, mine was a vanity metric. And I was like, what's that? And so, yeah, we went from there. And so like quite often I'll have companies say, so I give training, right? And they're like, how do we know your training works? And I'm like, yeah, you could see how many butts there were in seats or how many people did this exercise. But I'm like, what most of my customers report is the devs talk to us all the time now. They ask us questions. They're nicer to us. They, instead of copying and pasting from Stack Overflow, ask for advice. They came to me and were like, hey, can you review this design I did, where previously we'd have to chase them. And I'm like, those are the behaviors that we want, right? I'm like, are your scans better? Is this happening? Are you not picking up the specific things we talked about, right? And that's really hard to get because it's sensitive information. But I feel like it's hard for an automated tool to give us, like, to measure sentiment, to measure relationships, to measure security posture as a whole. And so I liked what you said there. Like it's hard to make sure we're doing. I find the best metrics take longer to measure. Does that make sense?
And they are almost non-existent. I would say that very good metrics are really hard to find, I would say. And yes, if you want to be very close to your goal and to your problem, it could be very, very, very hard to measure or nearly impossible.
But
it depends on the context. It depends on the goal, and it depends on the questions. It depends on what you set up.
in the chat, someone was saying how nice the devs are to us. I'm going to track that. I'm going to start tracking that metric. But a lot of security champions. So we do security champions, I feel, for two reasons. And one is to have a better relationship. So some people will say reduce friction, but I would say to have a good relationship, like working relationship, because I've worked with lots of security teams where none of the devs know their names and they don't know how to reach them and they don't speak to them. And then the other thing is to scale our efforts, right? And so I feel like it's easier to measure that we're scaling than, our relationship is better, because some people might be professional, but it's still frosty. And I don't need to be best friends, but I need to know that they know they can come to me or us. But I have this
Yeah.
great question in the chat from Conleth, and I want to make sure that we get to it. So he had a question about large organizations and how to best use SAM and DSOM using OpenSAMI. So when the organization is likely to reorg at some point, should you tie SAM to systems and applications and products, and then tie DSOM to each team? Or should we expect that there is going to be rework every so often, like when we do a reorg and we need to build all of those metrics again? I know that's a hard question.
I will start with the easy part of the question and then we can move on. So picking a scope it could be very challenging. DSOM focuses on products. So DSOM says don't go anywhere outside the product. You could roll up your scores at the level of the team, but you have to do an assessment at the level of the product. And it's geared. It has actually questions: have you implemented this or not? So you don't really have a gray. You don't have a scale there. Although I think that the DSOM team is working on introducing some sort of scaling in there, like Sam has. Now, SAM, on the other hand, you can pick your scope. You can go at the level of the team, or you can go at the level of the product, or you can go higher. You can go at the level of business unit, which has many teams and many products, or even you can go even at the level of the organization. And of course, there you will have to figure out, okay, if I have two teams and one is doing it and the other one is not doing it, how do I create a result? So there is some, I would say, experience required from the side of the assessor. But then the key question or the key problem there is, again, you need to do these assessments to figure out what you want to improve. And those improvements are individual activities or individual tasks that should eventually end up in Jira or whatever issue tracking system you're using for someone to be assigned to it to start working on those improvements. And by the way, there is a mapping between SAM and DSOM. So you could do a DSOM assessment at the level of the product, then go with SAM towards a higher level, and then fill the gaps, because there are some gaps between SAM and DSOM, by doing an additional assessment. How good am I doing? I'm not sure where to go there from this point on.
You're doing great. Spiros, did you want to add anything?
I'm going to read the
No,
question.
that was perfect. I would say only
Maybe
if you want to go from SAM to DSOM, you can use OpenCID in the gap analysis.
Exactly. I just want to add, we know some organizations who are using SAM for several years now. They're pretty successful with it. And they are using it at the level of business units. So every business unit is assessed, and the reorganization, it doesn't happen that often. They do get new business units, they get assessed, they have their new improvement targets, they have to improve. But then you could also have a business unit get split or two get merged. I don't think that's a too complex issue to deal with in the context of SAM, and I would say that DSOM is to be largely the same.
Okay. Ahmed just asked such a good question in the chat. He's like, what about one metric for all? Like, what would be the most important metric? And I mean, in my opinion, so this might hurt as a metric, but I would say that we're having less security incidents and breaches, because all the other things, whether it be like less vulnerabilities, this or that, like what costs us money, what hurts us is like the data breach or whatever security incident. That's my thought. Oh, and he's saying, for SAST or SCA or something like that. So what would you two say
I'll
you
give the word
have
to
to
Spiros first. Yeah.
if you
Go
have
ahead.
to condense a whole AppSec program down to a metric, breaches might not make as much sense, because even now, breaches are because of, let's say, very mundane things. Somebody got phished or lost a password, and it highly depends on the size of the organization, right? Verizon or AT&T, like, for example, have wildly different attack surface than Summit or Smithy or you yourself, Tanya. So instead, I would say perhaps a good metric would be the delta of improvement. So how fast am I improving month to month? And it doesn't have to be, and it has to be on the things I care about. So if I say at the beginning of the year that I care about, somebody mentioned SAST, that I care about less noise in SAST, what have I done to reduce the false positives in SAST, right? Or what have I done to increase the SAST adoption? And maybe find less SAST findings in production on brand new code, things like that. There is no metric, because application security is a business process, right? And it highly depends on the context of the business. There is not one metric that you can use as a silver bullet. You need to make up your mind on what do you care about for your specific situation. Hence why Sam has all those spider graphs and things like that.
Aram, I feel like you wanted to add something, but you don't have to.
I'll be brief. I would go with this: do a SAM assessment or a DSOM assessment. You will come up with a score. Set your target, and then your progress to that target is the metric. I think Spiros mentioned that. And then something that I would also do is introduce a certain percentage of time that people should be spending on security of your team. So everybody spends on security 5% of their time. Maybe it's simplified and exaggerated, I would say. You don't have to do exactly that, but X amount of that. I've seen this in some teams, and it's an excellent idea. I think I've seen in some teams where they had the maximum cap of their time, but if they spend 10% of their time on security, it's fine. Nobody's going to tell them anything. That's a good idea, because that introduces the consistency. And like the US Marines slogan is slow is steady, steady is fast. I think you can use it for security as well.
Nice. I like that. Okay, so we have to ask the AI question. And I know there's many questions, but how do we see AI helping or hindering in the future? We're already seeing vibe coding hurting mostly. Do either of you, so you can answer the positive question or the negative question, either one of you. And Spiros, I think we should start with you because you're literally building such things. So how do you think it can help us?
AI is a tool, right? It's the way I see AI is like seeing the same thing as when PHP or Python came out. By the time we find good ways to use it, or we mature in our usage of it, we're going to make lots of mistakes, because mistakes make sense. They're human. So in the meantime, I see AI hindering because we're going to make those mistakes. On the other hand, we need to embrace it and use it as much as possible. There is a question in the chat, for example, where there are developers use a bunch of models for applications, and how do we have consistent guardrails? The answer is you don't. A model is literally a third-party dependency unless you have your own like on-prem models, and you only allow those models. You don't, similar to how you don't control the third-party dependencies or any other thing that the developers use. The only way to do this is to add your own guardrails or develop your own guardrails. So for like vibe coding, perhaps you can increase SAST, ACA, etc. Like adoption. And this is a perfect opportunity for it because now you have the business buy-in. For third-party dependencies and models, perhaps you can create your own model garden, or perhaps you can find a way to make sure that you scan every single model. There is countless, even now open source and free tools that allow you to do that, right? Like NVIDIA has published Garak, there is Model Scan, etc., etc.
Cool. Ram, did you want to add
I
anything?
have to say, I'm not an expert on AI, so and we don't really use AI much. We've actually started an initiative internally where we're gonna define top down a number of problems, very well scoped. So not like okay, magic, do some magic. Very well defined problems. One of them is automated code reviews. The other one is help with writing unit tests of very specific problems that we think AI might make sense, might help, and then dedicate some amount of time researching whether it actually helps us or hurts us in terms of speed, I would say. Because, yeah, in terms of speed and quality, I mean, code reviews have to be qualitative, but yeah.
I would say the AI is going to help us and hurt us in the same way by going so much faster. I feel like the other thing is that we're putting an incredibly powerful tool into untrained hands. And so, over the past couple of years, we've had data scientists, writing Python scripts and throwing garbage into prod. And just to be clear, I don't dislike data scientists. It's that they're not computer scientists. And so they are not behaving like software engineers. They're behaving like someone that is a very smart person, but who is not trained in these processes. So they're not following the processes for the most part. And so now we have, a business person, like a CEO, throwing together a website on the weekend, vibe coding it and publishing it to prod. And the security team finds out like 3 weeks from then when it's breached, and they're like, how'd this happen? Right. And so it's so hard. If we're going so fast, we're essentially giving scalpels to toddlers, right? And so I feel like that leads into, so there are 2 AI questions in the chat. And so I'm sorry, I'm going to skip to the second one instead of the first one. But like, how do we manage consistent guardrails, especially when devs want to do all the different things and use every tool? So I have a few ideas, and one would be you create one for them. So you have a reg server, you have prompts, you have all of these things, and you've done these things so it's making more secure code to start. And you give it to them, you buy the license for them, you teach them how to use it, and you explain how it's providing better code. Right? And you, like, let's say you have a secure coding guideline or standard, you create prompts out of that, or you feed it into the reg server, or whatever it is that you want to do. If you can buy a guardrail tool that works well, if you can put that on top, right? And explain to them, this is why we're doing this. So you've motivated them via knowledge, you've motivated them via training, and you make it the easiest way to get to prod. Right. And so after, let's say you do a stack analysis scan and software composition analysis scan, and the SCA tool is like, oh, these 5 libraries don't exist. And also, the SaaS lights on fire and combusts because of the crappy vibe code. But when we run it through the security teams tool, it passes, right? And we show them the best. So the way we've made is the best way because it's the easiest, fastest, highest quality way. And so then we've created a guardrail and a secure default. And I feel like one of the issues is that the security team's like, no, don't do that. Instead of, here is what I would like you to do. And it doesn't totally suck, because sometimes the security team's like, this is what I want you to do. I'm like, that's impossible. It's going to take 5 times as long. And I have a deadline on Friday, so tough shit. I mean, excuse me. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything before I do the next AI question, because there's another good one. And then we have to wrap up, unfortunately. Okay, so to add on to that, are there any do's and don'ts when using an LLM, like a plain ChatGPT or a plain Claude? So like you haven't got to add any awesome stuff to it. what would be, so the question was to help with threat modeling. So I would say giving it as much context about what threat, it's like, can we have it read all of Adam's books? Like what, what options do we have? It's like you run out of conversation context. I'm like, what? But do we have any ideas on do's or don'ts for threat modeling besides take everything it says with a huge grain of salt?
I would never do threat modeling with AI tools. Well, there is the only case is where I would think about it is if you're doing a threat modeling with your team, and you pull your team, you give them DFD or any architectural diagram, and then you say, okay, guys, let's go find threats. If they run out of steam and they don't know what a threat here is, which would be, I would say, it would be a bit strange. And for me, threat modeling should not be a day activity or 5 day activity. It should be like a couple of hours of time box session. Then you could tell everyone like, okay, check with consult your chat GPTs, ask it whatever you want, and bring a threat from that you think is applicable and realistic for our case that we're looking at right now.
Awesome. Spiros.
So AI is fantastic at format translation. So if I have my DFD and it's in a picture, or maybe even in a picture from a phone on a whiteboard, I can use an AI to roughly translate this to something like a mermaid diagram or something that a human could use. Obviously, not something very complex, but if it's simple, very, very easy. Another thing that AI can do is, with exactly this translation capability, is translate between things like, oh, I have a database there, and the data that goes into the database is personal information. And you can ask it questions like, hey, I'm in Europe, what do I need to have there, right? And then it can list a bunch of things as suggestions. So to add to what Aram said, if you use AI to translate between data formats and as a kind of a prompt for humans, like, hey, perhaps you need to use to consider this or consider that, perhaps it makes sense. Obviously, you take everything that it says with a grain of salt. Obviously, you take everything that it says as if it's just a suggestion, and you need to cross-validate. You don't just grab a bunch of CWEs and dump them to developers to fix. That would not be great. But if you do these things, and maybe if you involve multiple agents, perhaps you can cut down on your workload when doing some basic threat modeling.
Okay, so now I have to ask the hard question and wrap up, which I'm really bad at. So for each of you, and I guess we'll end with me, I want to ask, what would a key takeaway be from this discussion? So like if you want them to remember one thing, what would it be? And then where can we get more of each of you? So like if we wanted to follow your work, or if you had a newsletter, or I don't know, if I'm like, that guy's awesome, I want more, how would we do that? And so Ehem, I'd like to start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, I just posted where people can find me. I have a LinkedIn profile and a collection of resources, appsecscience.com, where I post interesting videos, blogs, and whatnot. Key takeaways. Look again at this AI thing. Everybody's talking about it. Maybe I'm too pessimistic about it. Maybe I just don't know it very well. So that would be my first key takeaway. And perhaps maybe doing at some research for security champions, and get to know that a bit more, understand that a bit more, and maybe organize another session like this with you guys.
Awesome.
The last one is a joke. It's not a key takeaway. But in every joke, there is a piece of truth. Spiros.
You're like, just to be clear, I wouldn't say no. Awesome. Spiros?
So I also posted where people can find me, LinkedIn and the Smithy website, where it has newsletters and things like that. For me, one key takeaway would be, if we change our mindset from security team being the police where we need to protect everything and we're responsible for everything that happens. If instead we change this to we are the team's physician, not doctor, physician specifically, where we get someone coming in who eats like fried chicken or fried burgers every day, and we tell them, hey, if you continue this, you're probably going to be dead at 50 from a heart attack. I suggest you do this, but I'm not responsible if you don't fix your life. Then a lot of these, with this mindset, a lot of these questions and problems are more easily solvable.
Nice. Nice. I like that. So I would say my key takeaway, so I'm not as familiar with OWASP SAM as Aram and Spiros, and maybe I need to read it again. I feel like I feel like maybe we all need to go check it out. And I need to maybe understand more of the differences between DSAM and OWASP SAM, because I haven't seen the new version of SAM, and maybe I should. And so that's my takeaway. And I'm Tanya Janka, also known as SheHacksPurple. So my thing was I just shared my newsletter, and if you want to join, it's free. And you would get invited to free things like this if you join. So with that, I want to say thank you, everyone, so much for coming. I'm really bad at saying goodbye. I'm going to send an email out with a video of everything that we did and a summary of all the points that we did. And I want to thank you very, very much for coming. And thank you so much to my co-hosts or panelists, the people that helped me make this interesting. So thank you, Spiros and Aram. And we will see you all again next time. Thank you.